call this meeting to order. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Picard,
Here.
Mr. White, Mr. Coots,
Here.
Ms. Wagner,
Here.
Ms. Trier.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, the minutes were sent out in advance. If there are no corrections needed, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of September 9th.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Coots will second.
All right. It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Trier abstains. I wasn't at the meeting.
The minutes have been approved. Moving to item 4, questions and public comment. Do we have anyone online or in person that would like to make a public comment?
I have no one registered online.
Okay. Well, if there's no one here to public comment, we can move on to the discussion and recommendation of East Prospect Street Reconstruction street width.
Matt, do you want to walk us through this item? My name is Matt Haslett with Strand Associates. I recognize you guys, I don't know if you remember me from over the years. Civil engineer for the city, and we are in the middle of designing East Prospect Street for reconstruction for 2026. And the reason that this street width kind of came up is that during design, our preliminary design, we've kind of run into a few challenges that we saw on East Prospect Street with the street width, and would like to have kind of a discussion and recommendation or approval of Strand's recommendation to narrow East Prospect Street. So East Prospect Street currently is 38 feet from back of curb to back of curb. The city standard for new constructed streets is 34 feet back of curb to back of curb. A few of the advantages of narrowing East Prospect Street would be there's a minimal cost saving. In the grand scheme of things, it's minor, but it is a cost saving to reduce some pavement, and the cost between reducing some asphalt paving versus extending the driveways just a foot or two, there's actually a reduced cost in that. But the main reason why reducing the roadway is going to be beneficial is the terrace there is pretty narrow. It's about 5 feet. There's very large mature trees out there on East Prospect Street, so narrowing the roadway would give the trees just a bigger area of the terrace. It'll protect the trees a little bit more. It will also help us with the driveway slopes, which are pretty steep out there right now. There's a few that are pushing 15 to 20%, which may not sound a lot, but it really is steep for people to get in and out of their driveways. As I kind of mentioned, it does conform to the current residential standard roadway width that was in the 2005 transportation plan. And another reason, even though we didn't do a speed study per se on East Prospect Street, there are studies, kind of general studies, that when you narrow the street, it kind of reduces the speed on East Prospect Street. Potential disadvantage of narrowing the street would be while maintaining two-side parking on Prospect, it kind of narrows that drive lane for vehicles to kind of pass each other. We wanted to just kind of bring this out as kind of a pros and cons of potentially narrowing the roadway. Strand's recommendation, the city's recommendation, is to narrow between Birch Street and Moss Street to 34 feet. And I will take any questions. I don't know if Drake or Dwayne have any other additional comments, but
No, I think that covers it. The reduction in the travel lane width is kind of the feature that encourages slower speeds as well, because people slow down because there is enough room, but your vision has narrowed, and so it makes it appear as if you want to slow down as you're passing another vehicle, or someone pulls off to the side and allows somebody to continue on. So it would certainly be a little different, and we could maintain the traffic lanes if we made East Prospect Street parking on one side only. So if that was a concern, there is still the opportunity to reduce the width of the road while changing the parking landscape on the road. But it is our recommendation to narrow to the 34 feet in compliance with the 2005 transportation plan, and that is the standard by which new subdivisions would be constructed. And we would ask the Public Works Board for their feedback.
Drake, why was the decision to narrow just between the Birch and Moss versus the entire length of the street?
that's just the project limits for this project in the CIP. The
Okay.
East Prospect Street was just between
That
Birch.
section, would you then continue it if you do the other sections?
So in the CIP, as Matt just mentioned, that block is the only piece of this project. This project extends down Prospect in that block to Moss, then a storm sewer in Moss, and then a block of Mulberry Street as well to bring storm sewer into the Prospect Street area. There will be some mill and overlay in next year's maintenance program in some of the streets in and around that area that's planned, but that's not proposing to narrow the streets. That's a maintenance on an existing condition. Some of those curbs in the next block are in pretty good shape down that hill. And then, of course, in the other direction, in front of the school, that was just chip sealed this past year. So at least a minimum of 7 years before that's even in consideration again.
What is the width difference between right there in front of the school versus when you go to Birch? Because that Birch is the next street down, right? Past the school. Yeah. So, like, will it be a significant difference from going off of Main Street onto, will that be distracting or any difficulties there? Will there be a change?
So
Is it 38 now and it would go down to 34, like narrowing?
It will narrow as you cross Birch Street through the plan. I'm looking up our chip seal measurements right now, and I'll have a dimension for you on Prospect here in a minute in front of the school.
So Main to Birch would remain the same. Birch to Moss would narrow, and at least for now, Moss.
To the dead end?
Moss to Prairie.
Yeah,
would-
would be
would stay the same.
the same as it is right now, for now.
Correct.
Because there is definitely parking on both sides of Prospect, especially in the
Correct.
summertime, because of summer school pickup.
And we don't necessarily believe you would have to limit parking on both sides of the street. There are streets with parking on both sides that it's still travelable. It will just be a different driving experience. Your field of vision will narrow, which is typically what would make drivers slow. I would indicate, I think that obviously it's the prerogative of the Public Works Board to make a recommendation, the city council ultimately, but I would question our ability to preserve a number of the trees if the roadway is not narrowed.
Right.
I don't think even under the tree protection standards that have been adopted, there's roots that are growing over the curb into the curb. I think that the damage that would be done to those root structures would compromise the tree enough that it would be concerning to retain the tree.
And we could probably add that even with a 2-foot reduction, some of those trees are well over the top of the curb. So the roots are, even with the 2 foot on each side, probably still have some concerns about the trees. And the answer, the chip seal on that block is 34 feet wide, so assuming a 30-inch curb, that's a 39 back-to-back in that block, 39 feet back. It's actually a little wider. Unless it's a 24-inch curb, then it's, the back-to-back is the same. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I guess the main concern is when you have two lanes parked on that street, when you're going down and picking up your kids, you've got 100+ kids getting out for summer school, and they're all coming out that back area. And just making sure that there is still that parking right by the school would be for the benefit of a lot of people involved because of just the chaos of what happens at those school let-outs. So if it's not impacting that, right there is where it gets parked up the most. And then down Birch Street, people generally park right in that first area in the 39. And there is enough width to safely get out of that area as long as you're driving slow. I don't see it being a problem then if you narrow past that area. But if you're narrowing right in front of the school, it's going to be a nightmare.
So the limits of the project at this point is Birch Street
Right.
East. And I think, Matt, we could look at through the design process where that transition happens, if it happens in the intersection, or if it happens as you travel east of
Could kind
Birch
of
Street.
taper it in, so it's not just an abrupt,
Right.
right at Prospect Street and Birch. We could keep the radiuses the same as they are now and then maybe taper it, 20 feet up, kind of transition it.
I don't think Prospect is perfectly aligned east of Birch versus west of Birch as well.
I believe you are correct. I'll have to look at it, but I believe they are a little off,
Yeah.
aligned a little bit.
All right, so do you wanna-
Yeah, going back to the trees and the roots overhanging there, if we would moving the curb and giving the tree more space, what would we do with the existing curb that it's already there growing over? Does a little piece of curb just get left behind in the middle of the apron, or
It would be-
is it possible to remove that without having to?
Under the tree protection policy, it would need to be removed by hand, under the supervision of an arborist.
Okay,
Sounds
thank
fine.
you.
And you are touching on a topic that Matt and I have talked about a little bit as we get into further details. That would be a topic of discussion, is there a portion of it that the arborist would consider just leave it there?
Yeah, and obviously, and the pictures in the memo, were very telling, and it's to the point where an arborist would have to go tree by tree looking to make the judgment at each case, so, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
I did pull up the aerial, and yes, it does transition at the intersection. As you cross Birch Street from west to east, the north side does narrow currently, probably by that 1 foot that is the difference.
Well, so are we looking for a recommendation from the Public Works Board? Because I would.
Yeah, a motion to accept the recommendation of the city's engineer to narrow the roadway would be in order. We would then likely incorporate this into the design plan, which would be brought back to this board at another interval, and then ultimately the council will grapple with the full design or as recommended by Public Works Board at the time of when we're preparing to let to bid.
Okay, well,
In the past, we have not taken, for example, on College Street, the Public Works Board grappled with whether to widen that road. And our typical practice is not to take those early design decisions on to city council. They get to ultimately make the decision when they get the full design picture and could adjust at that time, and we could amend the plan.
well, I would entertain a motion to recommend to narrow East Prospect Street between Birch Street and Moss Street to 34 feet back of curb to back of curb.
I'll make that motion. Just like you said it. So eloquently.
Well, can we take a voice vote then?
Someone should formally
Miss-
second
Oh,
it.
oh, yeah.
Mr. Coots will
Sorry.
second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Coots. We have a motion presented and seconded. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, new
Thank
to
you.
this. Okay. Now we move on to discussion and/or recommendation to the Catlin Drive intersection analysis.
Kyle, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Would you be willing to take the Public Works Board through the analysis that you did? Kyle is the traffic engineer we engaged for the analysis of the potential change of Catlin Drive.
Drake, could you just
Sure, yeah.
refresh my memory since I wasn't here? How did this come to your attention? Why did
It
you?
came about as a result of the Milton Street reconstruction project, and some residents expressed concerns over
Okay.
speeding on the street.
Thank you.
And so the council grappled with a number of different items, and this was one that was ultimately referred to the Public Works Board for analysis. When is everyone ready for Kyle?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to walk through the document that's dated November 6th that was in your packet. It kind of steps through what we did to take a look at the roadway and then some evaluation of that intersection itself. First off, we went and collected data October 17th through October 24th, so we got a full week's worth of data out there with, we have these radar units that we attach to poles along the roadway, so the nice thing is it is something that is not greatly noticeable, and we get good true speed data for the vehicles because no one stays slowing down if they see a flashing light at them with a speed trailer, things like that. So when we look at what we counted for the roadway itself, in general, Milton Street didn't have a whole lot of traffic. It was fairly low volume. Looking at the road, so the two main hours that seemed to be of concern were the beginning and end of the school day. And that's what we first looked at under this daily roadway volumes heading. Figure 1, which is on page 1, is an evaluation looking at that 7 to 8 a.m. and also that 3 to 4 p.m. time period. I have two bars in here. And when we look at the profile of traffic out during the day, you kind of can identify a general background level of traffic that stays out all day long. And there is a small bump during both that 7 to 8 and 3 to 4 p.m. time period. And what we show in this graphic is kind of the magnitude of that bump. During the 7 to 8 a.m. hour, about 10 of the 19 cars that are on the roadway seem to be additional traffic going to and from the high school. And during the 3 to 4 p.m. hour, there's 39 cars, and about 22 of them seem to be also going to and from the high school, just from the amount of extra traffic we observed during that 1 hour itself. It is also fairly balanced between eastbound and westbound. It's not exactly perfectly 50-50, but it's at least 60-40 during both those hours, so it's not 22 cars leaving at the end of the day. There's some traffic coming in, going eastbound, and then some traffic leaving, going westbound during that time period.
Hey, Kyle, could I ask a couple of quick questions?
Of course.
One is, where on the length of the street was the speed and traffic measured?
So where we set up our detector is, it was kind of on, trying to get the second utility pole that was on the south side of the road, and we were aiming kind of about middle of the block for where we would get our detection point, trying to get as far from the intersections as we could to get a true roadway speed.
Okay. And question 2 is, your figure 1 chart for the 7 a.m. seems to show about 5, 10, 15, about 9, maybe 19 high school traffic and 9 background, but your text doesn't, it's.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean, yeah.
It seems,
Yeah, so we've got about
which one's right?
the graphics, because
Okay,
the
thank
graphic
you.
is made directly from the data.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all.
Okay. When we look at the total volume that typically runs on Milton Street a day, it's about 250 vehicles a day. And we did figure, looking at total traffic during the whole week, during those two peak periods, about 13% of the typical weekday traffic is that volume going to and from the high school, it appears like. So overall, that seems fairly reasonable for something located so close to the school that you would expect some school traffic. It doesn't seem to be something that is a large volume of your daily traffic during the school year itself. The other question that was related to the residents that talked to Drake was looking at the speed of vehicles on the roadway itself. So like I said, these counters get both vehicle volume and they also get the speed of the vehicles itself. Figure 2 looks at kind of the total speed data during the entire count that we had, and because it records both incoming and outgoing traffic, I have a breakdown of eastbound vehicles and speed, westbound vehicles and speed, and then the total looking at both directions. Because we were kind of wondering, are there any differences during the day, any trends that seem to be putting us one way or the other, what the speed looks like. Overall, for a roadway that was at posted 25, recently was reposted back down to 15 miles an hour, about 15 days before we were out there for the count. The numbers seem to be fairly reasonable. In general, the average speed for Milton Street that we recorded was slightly below 22 miles an hour. The 85th percentile speed, which typically is considered something you try to be within about 5 miles an hour of the posted speed limit, is still at about 27 miles per hour. So, you know, as we're looking at this, it's maybe telling us, okay, some of the traffic is still probably proceeding as if this was a 25 mile an hour roadway. But when we look at the 10 mile per hour pace, that is definitely starting to skew more down, where our 10 mile an hour pace is generally about 17 miles an hour to 26 miles an hour. And what that is that's the 10 mile per hour block of speed that the majority of the cars are driving at. So that also gives you an indication of where you're sitting at. And if most of that 10 mile per hour pace starts trending down, you're getting more vehicles that are starting to follow that speed. We did also have a maximum speed of 42 miles an hour. When I looked at the higher speed vehicles, which I considered 35 and above, they seemed to be somewhat random. There didn't seem to be a pattern, and there wasn't a whole lot of them. But we just want to make sure to note that that is what we observed, so we can pass that along.
Kyle, when you say there's no Kyle, it's Drake. When you say there's no pattern, I know that you had looked at where the high speeders were occurring, and were they within the 7 to 8 p.m. and 3 to 4 p.m. time period, or were they outside of that, those kind of areas that were attributing to high school traffic?
Most of them were outside of that time period. Where I said no pattern, there didn't seem to be like a high correlation to those time periods. For instance, I believe the highest speed recorded was actually at about 10:15 in the morning. We also had another higher speed recorded at about 8:20 at night, I believe.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And your report has a very nice chart on sequential pages showing all the traffic, a nice histogram, and then on the following page in blue, the traffic for, I think it was 3 to 4 p.m. And the histograms, you know, they're pretty well matched up.
Yeah, you're getting to some of the stuff I was going to talk about earlier, where there doesn't seem to be a huge disagreement where that 3 to 4 p.m. traffic runs at a generally different speed than the rest of the day. It all seems to be fairly, I don't know, following the same distribution of speeds in there. Moving to figure 3, that is that first histogram you're talking about. This is just looking at total volume, all the vehicles we recorded, and you kind of see the distribution. A couple things as I was evaluating that I noticed is, it typically shows up in a bell curve type format, and on this bell curve, the top of it seemed to be a little bit broader than normal. And what I think we're seeing is, the broad part of it starts generally about 16 miles an hour. And I think we're seeing cars that would have typically been going about the speed limit to a little bit below the speed limit. They have started to slow down. And that's why our average speed is down to 22 miles an hour. But some of the vehicles that were kind of on the higher speed of that bell curve haven't started slowing down as much. So that's why our 85th is still at 27 miles an hour. So it seems that there is definitely some shift of traffic to the left on these curves, but it hasn't hit all types of drivers yet, and that's probably something that is just a factor of when the data was collected versus when the speed was changed. And I'd expect, given another 6 months or something like that, we might see a continuing trend to the left on these histograms that I have presented here.
Thank
And
you,
yeah, if you
Kevin.
want compared, yeah. Did you have a question?
No? Do you still have
Oh.
more presentation?
Just a couple more things for you here real quick. So as it was mentioned, figure 4 shows that 3 to 4 p.m. also seems generally in the same pattern. And then our final conclusions from this, there are a couple of general discussions we had about things that could be done at the Catlin Drive Milton Street intersection. It was looking at either do nothing, looking at some restrictions to westbound through movements through signs and pavement marking, and then doing that restriction only during the peak hours. But in our conclusions, looking at the data that we have, I think doing nothing seems to be probably the best bet at this point, because there doesn't seem to be a huge speed problem, a huge volume problem, and to do some type of signing change would require enforcement, which would require time and money from the police department, and it just doesn't seem like this is necessarily a problem that needs to be addressed at this time.
Well, thank you so much for the report. The report's very well written and easy to understand and was very informative. We also want to appreciate the new signage that was posted. What decision was it just the reconstruction that led to posting that sign?
The city council took explicit action to change the speed limit, so they adopted a new ordinance.
Perfect. So, it seems like we've taken seriously the public safety concerns involving this roadway. We appreciate the public's concern, and it has led to a decrease in the overall speed based on the traffic data that we're seeing. And it seems like the most reasonable option is to do nothing at this point.
Yeah, we could certainly, if resources were available, we could certainly measure again, like you said, in 6 months to see if behaviors are continuing to adapt to the 15 mile per hour signage. But the current data based on this report from the traffic engineer is that additional interventions aren't justified.
Would it be possible to post, at some point, if a speed monitoring sign just to remind drivers of this new posted? Because every time you have one of those signs up under a new posted speed limit sign, that seems to remind folks.
We actually bookended, so on the week before and the week after the deployment of the Armadillo device by Strand, the police department did have their speed board out as well. Typically, they will deploy that in areas in which they're noticing that speeding may be an issue. So it certainly could be something that they deploy again in the future to offer additional reminders of a change in the speed limit. Obviously, the police department is aware of the change in speed limit and can adjust their enforcement and patrols as necessary.
I haven't seen that sign personally, but I've been in communities where when a new speed sign comes up, they have like a fluttering flag on it or something to make, that you actually see it versus just ignore it. Did you consider something like that?
We did. I have not gone out recently to see if there are any still out there or if we had installed them. We did discuss putting the red flags above them, and we certainly can.
We can.
We have some in our inventory that we can put out there to bring draw additional attention to the 15 mile per hour sign.
Because that's a big change in speed. And then how are you going to get this information, this good report to the people on Milton Street, particularly the people who brought the concerns forward? Is there going to be some way to allow them to be able to see the effort that the city went through to address their concerns? Like close the loop, close that feedback loop?
So after a recommendation, it will go to city council. So it'll be available on our website. As far as like a direct mailer or something like that, we don't have plans to do something of that level. But certainly, council members can distribute as well. And I know that they've been following along in this process. So I think perhaps when the council ultimately makes their discusses and makes their decision, that there'd be an opportunity, obviously, to speak on the item at the council level before they take final action.
And it was posted for this meeting. It is this report is already available on the website under the Public Works Board agenda for today, and this meeting is being televised.
Okay.
I just want to mention one other tidbit of information in the report, and that was that the results indicated that an average of approximately 13 additional westbound vehicles travel on Milton Street during the hours of 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. So the proposed signage would affect approximately 13 vehicles per day, which is not a huge number. Another thing that popped into my mind that was surprising about this report is there was an increase in traffic during the 2 school periods, but it wasn't in just one direction, it was in both directions.
Directions, yeah.
A similar amount, I believe, in both directions, which also surprised me.
It's probably due to the location and being between Lakeside Lutheran and the high school. So there you have traffic going both ways. I'm guessing. So, it makes sense because that's the location of that street. Do we need to make a motion to address this, or?
A motion to make your recommendation to city council would be in order. This will proceed to the city council for final action.
I would make the motion to take no further action on this issue and make that recommendation to city council.
And I'll second. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The motion passes. All right, next up, item 7, discussion recommendation on the sanitary sewer user rate proposal.
Travis Anderson is here. He's our engineer for the wastewater utility. I will just to introduce this item. This user charge rate, recommended rate increase is only for rates that would be necessary regardless of if a capital improvement upgrade for the treatment plant occurred or not. So this is only for existing O&M costs and capital projects that are currently either approved in the capital improvement plan or have taken place in recent years. So this user rate charge is not related to the wastewater treatment plant project.
So doesn't next year's capital improvement plan include?
Engineering only.
I thought it included something like 2.5 million or something. That's
Correct.
That's engineering only?
Yes.
Oh, geez.
It's a big one.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Drake. So the background, back in 2019 was the last sewer rate increase that the city approved. Since that time, obviously, costs have increased in the wastewater industry. We've seen pretty substantial cost increases, particularly since COVID. So, pretty much right after that last rate increase that you did, costs have greatly gone up across the board. So, primarily, what we're talking about, as Drake mentioned, this doesn't include the major upgrades that are recommended in the facility plan. This proposed rate increase would accommodate the increases in operation and maintenance costs since 2019. There have been a couple of smaller sewer replacement projects that revenue bonds were taken out for, and then also the more significant maintenance projects that are in your approved CIP. And just to give you a little bit of flavor for some of those cost increases that I mentioned. So at the treatment plant, there's obviously a variety of costs of treating the wastewater. There's energy use, plant staff labor, chemical costs, lab costs, sludge hauling costs. There is a table in the report that details all the variety of costs that are included to run the plant on a day-to-day basis. That's table 3. But what we've seen since 2019 is that a lot of those costs have outpaced probably the typical inflation costs that you might see, like in a consumer price index. So, for example, the chemical costs to treat the wastewater, which are required in the plant's permit to meet the state's limits, those chemical costs have increased by 50% since 2019, and insurance costs have doubled since that time frame, and that's a major cost, and there's nothing really that you can do about it. You need to have insurance. And then sludge hauling costs for ultimate disposal of the sludge that's generated from the treatment process, those costs have also doubled. So that's obviously put strain on the revenue that you're taking in, and warrants the increase in proposed rates. This really is accommodating the actual cost of service that the utility is actually seeing today across all these various O&M costs, and then as major maintenance items come up, those costs have increased as well. We've seen construction costs greatly increase in the last 5 years. Not having, you've been maintaining your rates without that increase in 2019, but just due to the inflationary pressures that we've seen, and to accommodate some of these maintenance projects that needs to happen, that's really what's driving the proposed rate increase that's in the study here. And what it ultimately means for a typical user in the city, so like an average family or an average residence, it's an increase of about $14 per month is what this means. Now, obviously, if you're using less water or more water, that number would change. There is a table that shows the impact of these proposed rates on users, for various users throughout the system. That's table 11. So you can kind of see what the current rates are. So that typical user that I mentioned right now is paying about $47 a month. So that's what they've been paying since 2019. And with this change, they would go from the $47 a month to $61 per month. And you can look at the various users depending on how much water they use, what the impact would be. And I would recommend that the city continue to look at these rates on a yearly basis. The facility plan has been submitted to DNR. The design for the treatment plant upgrades are anticipated to start next year. Growth plays a factor into these rates. So I would say, balancing growth that occurs over the next several years with the cost of upgrades in the future, to continue to look at that on a yearly basis and make adjustments as needed to accommodate future projects. But really what we're talking about tonight is just to cover your current costs of treatment with the recommendation to implement these rates effective January 1st, 2026, so that for the year in 2026, you're covering your costs of treatment. And happy to talk about any items in specific, but that's the general overview.
Could I ask a question for the, when you were talking about the percent increase for residential? So like on table 9, it's for next year, 2026, it looks like that 3/4 inch meter size would be a 31% increase. And then that chart that you were showing, table 11, that would be for 2027, that would be an additional 29% on top of the 31% increase they'll see next year?
Yeah, so I apologize for the confusion with the years. This is all related to 2026. So if you see 2027, that really should be 2026. We're just talking about next year. And the difference that you're seeing there in table 9 for the 3/4 inch meter, that's just for the meter charge itself. And then if you go down to item B in table 9, the volume charge, so the charge per 1,000 gallons of water that they actually use, that's going up 28%, and it averages out for a typical user to be about 30%. And the percentages are different because this is based on the actual cost of treatment, so we allocate certain costs that are based on flow, or certain costs that are based on loading, or certain fixed costs which would go on more of the meter charge. And we do it that way so that it's a defensible system of rates, where we can actually say, well, if you're gonna send 1,000 gallons and it's this high strength of wastewater, this is the actual cost of treatment, and that just gets passed directly onto the customers. So that's why they don't increase at exactly the same percentage.
Okay, so if we were going to say what would be the residential percent increase, you're saying we should be looking at table 11 as the best summary of what people could anticipate or commercial could anticipate?
Yep, that's exactly right. Table 11. So it's like a smaller family would be at that like 35,000 gallons, maybe even less if it's a single person living there. Kind of the average user is around that 50,000, maybe a little bit bigger families around the 60,000. So that kind of gets you in the ballpark of the typical range of residences.
I would note the budget that is included later on in your agenda does assume implementation of the new rates. Sam, can you confirm if the new rates weren't adopted in 2026, the wastewater utility would be projected to operate at a loss, correct?
That is correct.
And then, this is all kind of new to me, but on table 2, for residential, there is no values for BODs, TSS, and total phosphorus. But then under table 7, there's values going across for residential.
Yep, good.
Just wondering if you could explain that to me?
Yeah, good question. So the way the rates are set up is that the typical users get a fixed meter charge, and then they get a volume charge based on how much water they use. Only the major contributors, so like the industrial contributors, if they are discharging a higher strength wastewater, then they get a surcharge added on. So the industrial users would get a bill for their additional BOD,
Right.
TSS, and phosphorus. For typical residential users, we are taking into account the cost of treatment for those items of, for those constituents that are getting treated, but they're baked into the volume that's getting treated. Because we don't want to get into a situation where we're monitoring, residential strength wastewater versus industrial, because residential wastewater strength is pretty consistent, across the board. It doesn't really change. So just to keep things simple, they get a meter charge and a volume charge. And the more complicated users that might have a higher strength wastewater, they would also have the meter charge and volume charge, but they would get the additional surcharges added on to account for their higher strength loadings.
In regards to growth, Travis, the facility upgrade, the facility plan projects a certain amount of growth within the 20-year period that the DNR requires. So would it be accurate to say that growth that occurs within that bound, as long as it doesn't, trip into the area in which another upgrade would have to occur, would reduce the rate impact on existing users in a way that's not projected? So the more users you add, that $14 might become $12.
Correct, yes.
And then when would we see the expenses associated with the new project?
I would anticipate that annually we will be seeing proposed rates to fund the through the project completion, which is construction. Design starts in 26, construction starts in 27, final completion of the first phase by 2030. Is that timeline
roughly
correct? So we would be
2030
looking
timeline.
at you're required to submit actually a rate plan with your facilities plan. So it's something that the council will be looking at as well they have their public hearing next week on the facilities plan that's been submitted to DNR. So I would anticipate that at the formal and final adoption of the project plan, that we will be revisiting the rates annually based on those costs, and see possible adjustments through the life of that project.
And you went quick, so 26 was design, 27 was construction,
The
and
start of construction, and we
And-
would anticipate completion and beginning of operation in the 2029 to 2031
For phase
of
one.
phase one.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why, instead of keeping the rate steady like you did from 2019 to now, you're going to be looking at it as an annual, because you're going to be rolling in some of these expenses of the new project.
Correct, and I think in general, it would be my goal to look at rates more frequently than every 6 to 7 years, that we'd be at least in a 2 to 3 period review under normal circumstances. But because of the project, I anticipate an annual review of rates.
What is the explanation as to why such a long period before we update the rates? Just curious. Like, why did we go without reviewing the rates from 2019 until now?
Yeah, it's project driven. The utility was earning a rate of return, so the budget it wasn't operating at a loss. There have been other, you balance it with it. There's been an electric rate increase in that time period, and at least one water rate increase in that time period as well. So those things factor into policymakers' decision on it. I've been here since September of 22, so this will be since I've been here, we've done a simplified water rate increase, an electric rate increase, and now this will be the sewer rate increase. So we have been kind of methodically working our way towards them, but in general, the utility was operating. Its revenue was able to cover its expenses and operate at a reasonable rate of return, and so it wasn't deemed a priority to increase the rates at those times.
It takes time and effort to do these rate increases and reviews.
Well, how many,
It
what
is,
people can afford, too.
well, it's, the benefit in doing them more frequently is it's not as much of a shock to the ratepayers. Oh my gosh, 29, 30% versus 10% every 2 years or 3 years. So
It's a,
it's a trade, there's trade-offs.
right.
Yeah.
I'm just-
And
I'm
we see
asking
that,
the
we see
question
that
'cause
across we see that across
fair.
the state as well. It is, for those 6-7 years, right, there were lower rates because they weren't increased over that time period, but then it results in a larger rate increase when you have one. So it is, as Mark said, there's a trade-off as to how to manage those rates.
And then the recent stuff that we've been seeing about the new meters and that sort of stuff, was that dealing with the sewage, wasn't it? Or
AMI
was-
meters is an electric and
Or is it
water.
purely electric?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
No,
your wastewater rates are based on the amount of water that's coming into your meter. So if you get an AMI meter for water, then it is also going to inform wastewater usage.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, for meter reading and meter reading labor, you're coming in at $63,000. I was just wondering if we were expecting, was that already showing the improvement? They were talking about how much money was being saved with the new meters. I'm assuming this is an
We
improvement.
still do have meter reading routes because we have not fully completed not 100% of users are using AMIs. And so until an entire route has AMI meters, the route can't be eliminated. We have done hundreds of meter installations this year, and that is continuing into next year. It then kind of transitions from meter reading costs though to meter repairs,
Okay.
meter change out costs. So it's a more efficient way of monitoring and billing, but there still are costs associated with the meters.
And then what type of things are under outside services for 150,000? Just curious. Well, it's one of the charts of the report that we're on, right?
Yeah.
It's enclosure 1, operation and maintenance cost allocations is his report.
I apologize, I was looking at the budget document when you brought up that 150 number. But I can stay on that document. Outside services, it would be any outside, as it sounds, any outside service. From engineering to,
testing, right?
say, maintenance, where you're
Testing is a big one, right?
testing, anywhere where you're hiring someone outside of your staff.
Emergency repairs, maintenance that might be done, that needed to be done by non-staff on lift stations, force mains, gravity mains, brakes. Obviously, we typically bring in a contractor to quickly repair a break that would occur. So those types of expenses.
I mean, at one point, you tried to decide whether or not you're going to bring that capability in-house to be your own staff versus using an outside service, but then you've got health insurance and you've got all that complication too.
Correct.
Okay.
So since this user rate is already in part of the utilities budget, can then we move on to the next discussion?
You should still take a motion to recommend adoption of the user rate case as presented,
Okay,
or an alternative recommendation.
okay. Well, I'd entertain a motion to approve the sanitary sewer user rate proposal.
I'll second
Or an
it.
alternative.
I'll second your first motion, not the and alternative.
I was asking for a motion, but I can make the motion. I'll make an emotion to approve the sanitary sewer user rate proposal. And you'll,
And Trier will second it.
all right, so we'll vote. All those in favor?
Let's do a roll call on this.
A roll call vote. Thank you. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Sorry about that. I was trying to get the mute off. Mr. Picard,
Aye.
Mr. Coots,
Aye.
Ms. Wagner,
Aye.
Ms. Trier.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we will move on to the bid award contract for Bartels Beach seawall replacement discussion.
Dwayne, do you want to take us through the bid documents? Or Matt?
Sure. Why don't we work through this together, Matt? I'll start with the first document that really talks about the available funds before we get into the bid tabs. So this project was in the 2024 CIP for $145,000 to, and a little background, it is, and maybe we should go to the drawing first. The drawing is to replace a damaged portion of the Bartels seawall. I think the third or fourth drawing. It's the area that's right at the mouth of the waterway that heads into the mill pond. And that angled area would be replaced. That wall would be replaced. Most of the 250 feet plus toward the beach would remain intact with some refurbishments. And then also the pedestrian bridge over the channel would be removed, and that portion would be redone with a landing. Am I explaining that correctly, Matt, on the plans?
Yep.
So the bridge would be taken, the part of the topic we'll talk about on the alternatives is to remove that bridge and have it refurbished and then replaced. So back to the budget document, to just give a little background. Available funds is $145,000 in the 24 CIP. There are remaining funds that were in carryover. Right term, Sam? Of 61.
I apologize, Dwayne. What was that?
Tyrannina reserve funds, not carryover, but reserve funds from previous year's work at Tyrannina Park. There were remaining funds in the CIP of 61,000.
Correct.
And then this year, the Parks Department is currently under budget on their CIP by 29,000. And the council is in the CIP for 2026, there is another 47,000. So your available funds for this project, using all four of those, are $282,000. Now I'll hand it off to Matt to kind of talk about the bidding document and the bid tab, so that we can then talk about the bid alternatives.
Okay, so what happened, what did you say, Dwayne, after the parks was under budget 29,000, and then you said that you were going to take money from the upcoming year?
So it's in the capital plan for next year.
For what was?
47,000.
47, thank you.
Totaling all four of those is 282,000.
So keep that number in mind. The project was bid out October 23rd, and Forest Landscaping was the low bidder. The base bid, which does not include the removal of the pedestrian bridge or any improvements to fencing, is $216,779. Bid alternative one, which Dwayne kind of touched on, was the removal and transportation, and then the reinstallment of the pedestrian bridge was $4,500. And then there were a couple different options for bid alternative two, either a steel fence or I'll back up. Either to do a decorative fence just along the new portion, or a decorative fence along the new portion and east towards kind of the swimming area of, the entire length of the wall, basically. And those prices are broken down there. bid alternative 2 totaled to $57,000. So I'm gonna go back to that, kind of that spreadsheet PDF that Dwayne was talking about with the CIP and leftover funds available. If you total up the forest landscaping's bid tab, that totals to $278,294, including doing the alternatives. And at first, it's like, okay, great, we have money to do both alternatives, but that does not include the engineering design or on-site construction administration services. So that third kind of table, per se, shows the base bid plus the alternative number 1, which is the bridge, plus the engineering fee of design and construction services, totals out to $272,000, which is within our $282,000, with a remaining balance of $9,721 remaining in the Parks Department. There's, at this point, not enough money to do both alternatives. So we're proposing to do the base bid and then the bridge work.
And then what about the parks being able to do the landscaping stuff as well? You know, because it says the city's responsible for this, you know, the general repair after getting the wall up, that's still within budget?
Yeah, we'll use existing staff and resources for that.
Okay. So in effect, all you're saying is that you won't put in the decorative fence at this point?
Yeah, with this
Because-
project.
As part of this project.
As part of this
Correct.
project, so you redo the wonderful little bridge, and then you replace the seawall, and then,
Yep, so the contractor will be responsible for the seawall portion, the repairs, and removing the bridge, bring it to a site where city staff will kind of fix it up and make it look real nice and new, and then the contractor will bring it back and reinstall it.
And this is just replacing the existing seawall that's degraded and not, because the project scope map shows it going the whole length of the channel to the road, but the rest of that is not going to be new seawall, it's just natural.
Correct.
Oh, I think what you're seeing back to the road, and that, again, as was mentioned, there are some elements of this project that will be done by staff to try and keep costs down. One of those are, in the drawing I think you were referring to, is the tracking pad and access for the contractor. So the city staff will create that path, clear it, make it stable enough to bring equipment for the contractor to bring to the back, so is what you're probably seeing. But the wall itself is generally in that, would be the southwest corner of the park. Again, I'll step back a little bit on so the current budget allows, as we said, and the recommendation, which is the base bid plus alternative 1, if the desire of the Public Works Board and Council would be to put a decorative fence in, then additional funding would be required.
An amendment to the capital budget would be necessary for 2026. We do think that there would be an opportunity to complete a decorative fence installation at a later date. We do note that it's a $57,000 cost, which we thought was a little high for that portion of the work. So it's possible that we could bid that separately in the future and obtain more acceptable pricing.
From a contractor focused on fencing.
Correct.
but in the meanwhile, the chain fence would stay.
Correct.
Okay. And then, I'm not very familiar reading plans. If you could, I'm looking at the plan right now, the mechanical drawing. If you could show me maybe the page or whatever. I remember Eric Schreiner saying that this was designed in such a way to help mitigate sand movement from Sandy Beach to other riparians, and also from going into the mill, you know, the Mill Pond channel there where you had to dredge before, right, from the sand moving. So what aspect of this design does that?
So I'm just going to clarify, the project manager on this job is a structural engineer. He was not able to make it tonight and attend, so I'm covering for him.
Okay. Like
From
I
my
say, I can't
understanding,
read
it's the addition of the riprap that avoids the sand eroding underneath so there'll be riprap in the water protecting the bottom of the wall and preventing any erosion, from waves and other, watercraft kind of eroding underneath and behind the wall.
And
I thought there was something sticking out to try to trap.
I would say the cross-section that Matt is describing and that you asked for I think is on page 7.
Correct.
Of the plans, and that's where it shows the riprap. It's not showing it necessarily sticking above the lake bottom, is what I'm seeing at this point. And we may have to inquire with the design engineer to provide an answer for you.
Thank you.
No, you're correct, Wayne. That riprap would not be, it would be flush with the lake bottom. It would not be exposed. Now you'd be able to see it, if you're just looking in the water, but
Right.
it'll go down,
Yeah,
a foot and a half to protect.
So my understanding was it wasn't necessarily, the sand wasn't coming from erosion. It was coming from the beach, movement from the beach. And so there was some discussion of trying to capture that so that it wouldn't continue along Ferry Street. So if you would ask the designer, I know I personally get questions on that, so I would love to understand it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions on this, or can we move to have a motion for this bid?
So, yeah, I think there's a prepared motion in here for this, right?
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the motion in the packet, the resolution in the packet, with alternate 1 and without alternate 2.
Mr. Coots will second the motion.
Would the clerk please take the roll?
Ms. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Picard,
Aye.
Mr. Coots.
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
Okay, item 9. Here we are. The end is near. Discussion and recommendation on the 2026 utility budgets, wastewater, water, and electric.
So this is an annual review by the Public Works Board of the utility budgets. It's my annual reminder that unlike the municipal budget, the general government side budget, utilities are not required to have a balanced budget. They are entitled to a rate of return. For the PSC regulated utilities, which are the electric utility and the water utility. So rates for the electric and water utility are actually set by the Public Service Commission. The city and the utility make requests for a review of rates and submit rate cases to the PSC, but they ultimately approve those rate cases. And I do believe we will, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we will probably need to begin a electric utility rate case in 2026 to meet the PSC's requirement that they set for us at the last rate adjustment that was approved.
That is correct. It should start in 2026 and take approximately 18 months, which would take effect in 2027.
So at the last time that we had a rate increase approved by the PSC, they put in there a requirement that we submit another rate case by a certain date. That date is in 2027. It is taking the PSC about 18, including the time to conduct the rate case by WPPI on our behalf. It's about 18 months. the PSC review of rates does take a significantly amount of time, so we do need to start early so that we can meet the deadline that they've set for us. I also anticipate, although not included in the water utility budget, that we will be eligible for a simplified water rate case next year. Simplified water rate cases are expedited rate reviews by the PSC. If you're deemed eligible, you are essentially automatically granted the rate increase. It is meant to keep up with inflation. It's the only utility that has allowed such a process by the PSC. Electric doesn't have the same. We were something like 0.1% off of the rate of return requirement to qualify for a simplified rate case in 2025. So we just barely missed the cutoff. So we do anticipate being eligible, so it is likely something we will seek authorization for in 2026, a recommendation from Public Works Board and final action by the City Council. Those rate increases are generally in the 2 to 4% range based on what inflation is. The last simplified rate case we did was unique during kind of the peak inflationary environment, and that was somewhere in the 8 to 9% increase under simplified, but that is a very atypical simplified rate case increase. So you will see that in each of the utilities, our revenues exceed expenditures. So we do recommend adoption of the utility budgets, and they are on the agenda for the City Council. It will be on the agenda for the City Council on the November 18th, in line with the final reading of the City of Lake Mills budget as well. If it's of interest, it's a similar, as far as like in some of the increases we're seeing, the City of Lake Mills has made their application to rejoin the State of Wisconsin Group Health Insurance Plan after receiving a 31% renewal notice for our current health insurer. That was not a sustainable trend. We have been buying independently since the consortium the city joined several years ago disbanded, and that trend has been at a ever increasing rate. We are a small employer, about 150 souls on the plan, which leaves us vulnerable to events that result in a experience rate where our costs are far exceeding our premiums paid. So we are looking at rejoining the State of Wisconsin Health Insurance Plan that comes with a increase, excuse me, as well as a surcharge charged by the ETF to rejoin the insurance plan. That surcharge does expire, so it will be cut in half in 2027 and then be eliminated in 2028. So that expense should go away over time as well. As far as employee increases, there's a 2.5% cost of living increase that is across the board for employees, and then for employees with a eligible performance review, there's opportunity for an additional 2.5% to move within their wage range. If there's questions, both Sam, Dwayne, and I are available to assist.
This is, and this is one where this will go to the city council, so we're looking for a recommendation today.
That's correct.
I would make a recommendation to adopt the utility budget as presented.
I'll second. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Picard,
Aye.
Mr. Coots,
Aye.
Ms. Wagner,
Aye.
Ms. Trier.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
All right. Now on to item 10, recommendations for future agendas.
Do you have any input or any idea on the replacement of Randy? Like what the process is going to be?
We've engaged a recruiter. We are looking at a restructure of the department, a director of utilities and a director of public works, which would separate duties, looking at grounds and facilities director and the public works director, and separating them out for a more equitable distribution of workload of those departments, and some more efficiencies based on shared skills among staff. So we have engaged a recruiter that should kick off this week. We are in a hiring freeze until the beginning of the year because of rejoining the state health insurance system. Any employee that is not currently covered by the city's health insurance plan would be forced into a high cost health insurance option under the state plan if they are hired between the time the resolution to rejoin was adopted and the end of the year. If they're hired after the first of the year, then they can choose whatever plan option is available under the state plan. So we do not anticipate any hires citywide before the end of the year. So sometime in the first quarter, we are hoping to have both positions filled.
And then the tour, the facility probably would be in spring? Or is it fine enough in winter? I don't know.
There were some
There's some
employees
talk of
on
that.
leave, which resulted in staff not being available to take the board through. So we are talking with the foreman about when they'll be capable of bringing the board through on a tour. So it is still on the list of things to get scheduled. We're just waiting for the staffing to align correctly for it, but we have not forgotten.
Sounds good.
And where are we at with finding a board president?
There's two options. You can hold a new election. There has not been an appointment to fill the vacant spot, so the vice president can continue in the role until the organizational meeting in 2026, or we can place on the agenda a new election of officers. So as the board would like us to do, we can place that on the next agenda of our next meeting, or when there is a new appointee, so when the board is full of members again,
You're doing a
So-
great job.
as the board would like.
Fine. Continue trying to run the meeting for a couple more months, hopefully.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
May is the organizational meeting. I apologize. Not
Oh.
April.
Okay. Sounds great. With that, if we have no other suggested items, I would like to adjourn this meeting.
Very good.
Gavel it.